Hello Deathguard players and welcome to Planet 40k. If you are new to the channel, we basically review units from the 40k universe. So the Deathguard Codex has just been released by Games Workshop, so it's now time to get stuck into the Deathguard. As this is the first of the Deathguard series, we will be going into the rules in a little bit more detail, as they will be new to all of us. So today's video we're going to be looking at the Plagueburst Crawler. This is one of your heaviest support options within the book. It comes in at 9 power level or 165 points. So to start us off, we'll go straight into the datasheet. So the crawler does have a degrading stat line, and once you lose more than half of the total wounds, you will be bracketed. Then when you go down to only 2 wounds remaining, you'll use the second bracketed stat line. As for the main stat line, so when you're at 6 wounds or more, movement 9 inch, weapon skill 6+, ballistic skill 3+, strength 7, toughness 8, wounds 12, attacks 4, leadership 8 and a 3+ save. Once bracketed, you will lose 3 inch movement and you'll drop to ballistic skill 4 and strength 6. And then onto the second bracket, you're going to drop to movement 4 inch, dropping you to ballistic skill 5 and strength 5. So these stats are actually very welcomed, as in the previous codex, crawlers started on ballistic skill 4 and now they're going to be ballistic skill 3, so it's pretty good. Losing strength is pretty meaningless, as this fig will only be used when you're in combat and you're hitting on 6s anyway, so you can't expect to be doing too much damage with it. Moving down the datasheet to the abilities area. It's got quite a few changes here. So firstly, Disgustingly Resilient is now not a 5+ feel no pain save anymore. It's had a total rewrite and it's now a -1 to all damage taken to a minimum of 1. Now the 5+ feel no pain was really good, but don't underestimate the -1 to all damage taken. It really starts to add up and you're doing this on every single dice. So for example, if you take damage from 5 heavy bolters that are damage 2 each, instead of taking 10 damage, you're only going to be taking 5 damage, as each single dice has a -1 damage. So it's not a -1 to the total damage, it's a -1 to every single attack. The next ability is a new one called Contagions of Nurgle. Now the contagion here you have is Nurgle's Gift, which is a -1 to enemy units' toughness if you're within a set range. Now as the battle does go on, the range does increase. It starts off at only 1 inch, so that's effectively anybody in engagement range will suffer a -1 to their toughness, but by turn 4 and onwards it will be increased to a 9 inch range, which is a pretty huge area when you circle around every single one of your units within your faction. So this is going to massively interact with weapon strengths throughout the game. They've kept their demonic 5+ invuln save, and they've also kept the explode ability, although it doesn't go off on a 5+ anymore like it used to. It's now a 6+, and anyone of course within 6 inches will suffer D3 mortal wounds. So before we move on to the weapon loadouts and options, we need to check out those keywords. So the keywords of note here are the Plague Company keyword, which allows it to be a part of a Plague Company to gain access to a stratagem within the company. There are 7 Plague Companies in total, and each one has its own stratagem along with a warlord trait and a relic. So as this unit is not a character and it can't be taken as a warlord, it's only going to really gain access to the stratagem. We'll probably do a video at some point on all the Plague Companies at a later date. Now other keywords of note here are it's a vehicle, it's a demon, and it's a demon engine. So they're going to interact with all sorts of stratagems and buffs within the codex. Okay, onto the weapon loadouts then. The unit comes stocked with a Plagueburst mortar, a heavy slugger and 2 entropy cannons. Now the cannons do cost you 5 points per cannon. These are not free weapons. Starting off with the big gun then, the Plagueburst mortar. It's got a range of 48 inch, it's heavy D6, strength 8, -2 AP and the damage is 2. It's got the blast keyword and it's also got the plague weapon keyword, which means you can reroll wound rolls of 1. Also you can target any enemy unit that isn't even in line of sight, which is a massive bonus, especially in 9th edition with all the new obscuring terrain rules. They completely ignore them. So 2 interesting changes to the weapon here is that there's no minimum range anymore. There used to be a min range of 12 inch, which really sucked once an enemy model got close. The second is the damage is a flat 2 rather than a D3, which is a lot more reliable. You know where you stand on a 2 damage weapon, nothing worse than going through armor and then rolling a 1 for the damage. So thankfully that's gone. Now the D6 shots is still a bit iffy, as you don't know what you're going to get each turn. It does have the blast keyword however, so it will help you somewhat, but strength 8 against infantry isn't really the way to go here unless you're talking about more elite infantry such as Terminators, but even then the damage is 2 and they've got 3 wounds apiece, so a lot of damage is going to go to waste using it on those. Vehicles are an okay option to target because you're strength 8 and a lot of vehicles are toughness 6 and toughness 7, so you're going to be wounding them on 3s, rerolling 1s. That's quite decent. The -2 AP is also pretty good and removes a reliable save. Bear in mind that although vehicles can shoot in combat with heavy weapons, you can't fire blast weapons in combat. So if you do get tied down in combat, the main weapon is not active until you have killed off the unit in combat. Now when you do declare your targets with the ranged weapons while in combat, always declare the mortar onto an enemy unit that isn't in combat with your Plagueburst Crawler. The reason for this is because there is a chance that with the other weaponry you may clear off the unit that you're in combat with, and then you'll be free to fire your mortar. Now if you haven't declared it, then technically you can't shoot it. Now in a friendly game, of course, you might be let off for this minor error, but in tournaments and whatnot you'll probably not get away with it so much. The next weapon here is a heavy slugger. This is a 36-inch range, heavy 4, strength 5, -1 AP, and the damage is 1. Note that this weapon is not a plague weapon, so you're not rerolling 1s to wound. It's really made for infantry units as it's a strength 5 weapon, and it's only a -1 AP and single damage, so it's not really geared toward anything more than light infantry. So really you're going to be aiming for your Orc Boys, your Termagants, your Guardsmen, and all other kind of weak units, especially those on a 6+ armor save. Now it's not going to do tons of work, but it will take off a model or two, and against the Space Marine meta you'll be lucky to remove 1 model. The 2 entropy cannons are both 36-inch range, heavy 1, strength 8, -4 AP, and the damage is D3 +3. They've also got the plague weapon keyword. So a nice change within the codex is the damage is now D3 +3 rather than a D6, so a lot more reliable, and this also makes all 4 of the weapons a solid 36-inch plus range. Now these have got a high AP and a good damage output. You should be aiming this at monsters and vehicles. You only got 2 shots in total with them, and you're hitting on 3s, so the chances are you'll get at least 1 to hit. You're likely going to be wounded on 3s or 4s if the vehicle is slightly tougher, and then like I said, rerolling 1s due to the plague weapon, which will hopefully turn those misses into wounds. The -4 AP throws the armor saves out the window, and either goes through the armor or leaves them on an invuln save, and the damage being D3 +3 is an average of 5 damage a time. So you have a max damage potential of 10 damage with the cannons alone. Now if you are able to catch a character that is out of the Lookout Sir range, then they also would be a valid target, as just one of these shots can take them off the board. Now there are 2 upgrade options for this unit. The first is removing both the cannons completely and replacing them with 2 plague spitters. This will save you from spending 5 points per cannon, so saving 10 points. So the spitters are 12-inch range, assault D6, strength 6, -1 AP and 1 damage. They are again plague weapons, and they also auto hit the target. Quite nice now because they've got an improved range. It used to be a 9-inch range, they're now a 12-inch range. Now the amount of hits is again quite unreliable due to it being a D6 hits per spitter, but auto hitting is really solid, and it also works in Overwatch 2. Strength 6 is wounded infantry on 3s, possibly 2s if they're only toughness 3. The -1 AP and single damage tells me that these weapons are made for anti-light infantry. Now if you do know who you're up against, then the selection of these weapons is quite simple. Like if you're going up against orcs, then go for the spitters, and if you're going up against a lot of vehicles and monsters, then take the anti-tank cannons that are strength 8. It's that simple. If you don't know who you're up against, then you've got to look towards your list and see what you need the most. Worth noting that these are assault weapons, so you could advance and fire these. Usually you'd get a -1 to hit penalty for advancing and firing, but these things auto hit, so there is no penalty really for the weapon, although it is worth remembering that you now can't fire all the other heavy weapons. Now it is a valid option if you want to get your tank someplace, such as an important objective, or just to be blocking a certain area. The second upgrade option is removing the heavy slugger for a Rothail volley gun. Now this weapon is 24-inch range, rapid fire 3, strength 6, -1 AP and single damage. Interestingly, the weapon previously was heavy 3 and it was a -2 AP weapon. It's now rapid fire 3 but only -1 AP. So swings and roundabouts with the weapon, but within 12 inches you're getting 6 strength 6 shots. So if you were looking for a close range tank, then getting the plague spitters along with the volley gun are not a bad shout, as both are very solid for taking off infantry models. Okay, the next section of the review is where we go into synergy within other parts of the codex itself, starting off with the stratagems that work with the plague crawler. Sickly corrosion is first up. Now it is 2 CP, but what it does is when you target an enemy unit with a plague weapon in either the shooting phase or the fight phase, then if the weapon scored a single hit, then until the end of the turn, any Deathguard attacking that selected enemy unit gets to reroll wound rolls of 1, even if their weapon is not a plague weapon. So it really boosts all the other non-plague weapons, but something to note here, it says it will last until the end of the turn, not the end of the phase. So even though you've got the option of the shooting phase or the fight phase, you want to be using this in the shooting phase to get the most out of it, because it's going to last through the shooting phase and the fight phase. Demonic Gluttony does apply as your tank is a demon engine, but it's more focused on the melee side of things, so it's quite doubtful that you're going to use your Plagueburst Crawler in combat. It does have access to it, however. Putrid Detonation for 2 CP lets you auto-explode once destroyed instead of rolling a 6 for it. Can be really neat if you're surrounded by a lot of enemy models. Overwhelming Generosity for 1 CP extends your range weapons by 6 inches for all of your plague weapons. Might not be required as you've got quite a good range of your range attacks, but if you are just short, it's an option. Then finally, Disgusting Force for 1 CP. Using the shooting phase, your mortar goes from damage 2 to damage 3. Then after you've fired and hit with this weapon, roll a d6 for each other unit within 3 inches, excluding Nurgle units, and on a 4+ that unit will suffer a mortal wound. So pretty good against those armies that like to clump together, such as Tyranids and Orcs. You can also aim this at a target that you wouldn't normally aim it at, purely because it's just surrounded by a lot of other enemy units. So keep that one in your back pocket at all times. It will catch out quite a lot of players. Now it is only 1 mortal wound per enemy unit, but they will start to add up if you choose the right one. Now before we get into the conclusion of the review, I just wanted to touch upon the new plague companies within the book. Now there is one in particular that caught my eye when doing this review. The Poxmongers, which are the 5th plague company, has a stratagem called Bilious Blood Rush. It's 1 CP and it allows your demon engines to fire blast weapons while they're within engagement range, and on top of that you add 1 to the hit rolls with all the ranged weapons that fire within engagement range, which I think is going to see a lot of play with Deathguard players, as bogging down a Plagueburst Crawler tends to nullify you as you can't fire the mortar, and now you can, and of course it's pretty deadly with that blast keyword too, so even hordes are going to suffer when they try to bog you down, and you're hitting on 2s with it as well. So to conclude with the review, a very tough unit. Toughness 8 is no joke, especially with an invuln save on top. It's reasonably priced as well at 165 points, and you're getting a solid amount of firepower. The loss of the feel no pain save does sting a little, but don't underestimate that -1 to every damage roll taken. Now I'm glad they fixed up some of the damage with the weapons, taking away the unreliableness. It was kind of cruel because it didn't reward the player much. Now it does most of the time, which is about fair. The new plague companies are a nice touch to the edition, which has a deeper feel to your faction. Now you're not just a generic Deathguard list, it's taking us further into the idea of customization, making the game a much more enjoyable hobby. So out of the heavy options, this is your toughest option, as the others are toughness 7, except for the Land Raider, but that's quite a pricey unit. No other option has an invuln except for the Defiler. It's got the same 1 in fact to 5+ demonic save. Now before we go into rating guys, if you are new and found the video useful or just enjoyed the content, then please hit that subscribe button below. We are doing reviews currently 4 times a week at the moment. We cover all the new books, so if you've got any friends that maybe play Space Marines or Necrons, then share our videos and get them on board. Okay, so this is the part of the video where we give a rating out of 5, 2.5 being average, 5 being overpowered, and these are purely based on opinion and my own experiences with the unit. As for the rating today, I'm going to be giving the Plagueburst Crawler a Planet 40k rating of 4 out of 5. I see this as a solid heavy support option. I do believe it to be better than the other ones in the book. It'll be quite interesting when I get to do the Defiler review, because at a glance I think it's a real solid option now, especially with those stat improvements that it's got, so we'll have to wait and see on that if it's any better. Remember to like the video on your way out. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.